You're listening to Exposure on Radio X. I'm John Kennedy, and that is Biffy Clyro with Dum Dum, the opening track to the brand new album, The Myth of the Happily Ever After. And I'm very pleased to say that connected to me online are Simon, James, and Ben, who are Biffy Clyro. Hello, how are you?
Hello. Great, thanks, man. How you doing, Joe?
I'm very well, thank you. It's great to see you all. A real treat to get all three of you in the same Zoom, as it were.
Can you imagine that?
I know.
A trilogy of mayhem, a trilogy of chaos is on your plate tonight, John, so I hope you're ready. I'm probably going to speak slightly less tonight because I always dominate these things, so I'll let the boys.
You're going to put the pressure on the Johnston brothers. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no pressure.
There's going to be a lot of dead air, John.
I don't think so. And it's amazing. I mean, this is a complete change to the world. You know, Biffy Clyro are back with a new album a year after their last. You know, we have the pandemic to thank, really, I suspect.
We didn't have anything else to do. Everything got cancelled as it did in everyone else's lives, and we scratched around, we struggled. It was a real moment of lacking purpose. Did not suit us. Having nothing to do did not suit us at all as a band, and we just did what all we know to do, which was to go back in and make some music. And I think in many ways, more than ever, I think the music really saved us this time. It was such a dark place the world was in, and getting a chance to get together and make some music was just the perfect way to put the world right in our little world, at least anyway.
Yeah, that's great. I know that I and many other Biffy Clyro fans are very excited and very pleased about this. You know, we got something to thank the pandemic for, that Biffy Clyro actually get on and do more recording, which is very exciting. And Dum Dum, the opening track, in a way sends us off in a direction that we wouldn't have expected from you, and we wouldn't expect necessarily for the rest of the album. And it doesn't continue in this style, but it is amazing. No guitars at all? Are there guitars on it?
There's like one little guitar melody at the end of the song, but this song actually sonically kind of gave us a path for the record, to be honest, John. It was a song I'd written for another project, and when we stopped working as Biffy, this song just wouldn't leave my head, and I felt like it could live in Biffy world. And we had a backwards and forwards about whether to make it a bit more rock, a bit more of just guitar, bass and drums, and actually it ended up losing the magic, so we kept a lot of the kind of demo I had created on the album, and it was one of those songs that just felt like it was an easing in, considering this record is quite an intense record because it's a reflection of the last kind of 18 months and the frustrations and things, but we wanted it to ease in and be a right welcome to the listener, you know, so that it's not just an oppressively intense listen, because there are moments of intensity, but this is the moment to kind of give the listener a bit of a cuddle and say, this is a weird time we're living in, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. It starts very, very gently, and you say things like, everything's great, but then by the end of the song, you've kind of explored that maybe everything isn't great.
Yeah, it's, you know, the title of the song, Dum Dum, it still blows me away how convinced some people are of their own opinions, and that is like the only way reality is. And I think it's been more than ever this era of our lives, you know, we all have to kind of be open to other people's perspectives and things. And during the pandemic, it was just a little bit disappointing when you saw some people would just have the blinkers on and not listen to anyone else. And it was just, no, this is what I believe, therefore don't ask me about it. And so that's where the lyrics are kind of coming from. They're a bit of tongue in cheek and how you could kind of live through this last year and not think that things have irrevocably changed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a tricky word. We all stumble on that one.
I don't think I've ever said it out loud. I think I've said it out loud.
And are those synthesizers, are they actually samples of your voice, Simon?
Yes. So the other project I was working on, it was all synthesizers, and I found this amazing bit of kit called a granulator, and you can basically sample anything and create a soft synth sound with it. So I just did a lot of experimenting with my voice and just trying to make completely unique sounds. And it just felt like, again, quite a twisted way to approach even working with synths and things, was to try and kind of bring the human back into it, you know, into the electronic. So it's still got soul there, but it's been manipulated to kind of almost the point of disfigurement.
Yeah, and the drum sound on that, those are real drums, are they, Ben?
They're real drums, but what we did was we sped the track up to twice the speed, then recorded the drums, and then slowed it back down, so it has this real kind of drudgy feel to it, and it kind of lacks attack, and it's all very swampy. And it makes you, it leaves you feeling very unsure of what the hell is going on.
Yeah, wow. So you're kind of recreating the unease of the last 18 months, sonically, as well as lyrically. Amazing. And then you follow up Dum Dum with A Hunger in Your Haunt. So just in case anybody was worrying, oh no, the new Biffy Clyro record, what are they doing? They're becoming a synth pop band. You kind of reassure us because this rocks ridiculously hard. Starts with this great kind of cascading guitar sound, and then just kind of goes full tilt, really.
Yeah, it felt that this was, I think it was important in this record to, after the kind of rug pull of Dum Dum, to just kind of highlight that, we are obviously still a rock band. This is not a lo-fi kind of messy record. We want to make a big bombastic album, and Hunger in Your Haunt comes in second. It's kind of got the essence of who we are as a band, I guess, throughout all our career. It was a riff that I had been kind of messing around with for a couple of years, and I could never quite crack the song. And I don't know whether I'd kind of created the problem with it in my own head, because when the pandemic started, this song just suddenly, it wasn't an issue. I just ended up finishing the song and wrote it all, got the arrangement all correct. And suddenly I was wondering what the issue was, why I'd struggled with it for so long. I think a part of that came from the liberation of actually everything stopped. We couldn't be a band. So suddenly these little moments didn't seem like issues. It was just pure joy. What's the fun thing to do in this song, rather than kind of worry about the different layers of it. So it made sense to come in with a wallop after the hug. So the track 2 is in fact the wallop.
Yeah, definitely. But it's amazing just how many twists and turns you fit into a song that is only 3 minutes, 50 seconds long or so. Because each time I've been listening to it, I kind of think, oh, wow, this is the same song. And they've kind of got this section where they go off in this way, and then it breaks down and goes in a different direction. And I love the way that you managed to do all that and yet still come in under 4 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess twisted pop music is always how we've kind of seen, or twisted rock music, I guess, is always what we've seen ourselves creating. And to me, even if a song is only 3.5 minutes, it can still take you on a journey. You can still feel different at the end of it. And one of my kind of pet hates about songwriting is when it is too much, two-dimensional. When you hear the first 20 seconds, you know what the whole song is. Now, there's definitely a place for that. This song didn't require that. This song was about kind of grabbing you, shaking you left, shaking you right, backwards and forwards, and so that you feel that you've been kind of messed with almost by the end of it. But it's always got to serve the song. There's a fine line between being like proggy or too virtuosic. I'm pulling some random words out. But it's a fine line between being enjoyable to listen to and then just being impressive to play. And that's what I hope we've just struck the right balance on a song like Hunger, where even though it's 3.5 minutes with tons of ideas, it still feels like it makes sense. It's still kind of, it takes you where you kind of hopefully want to go, as much as it's surprising.
Yeah, totally. And if it was a song that you had been working on off and on, trying to get it right over time, lyrically, were the lyrics only written then, once you had the arrangement?
Yeah, I had a couple of key lines for the chorus and everything that I knew I was going to keep in the song, but no, the rest of the lyrics pretty much changed, John. And actually, because this album started as potentially like a kind of sister record to Celebration of Endings, but the way life was and the way last year was, it became its own beast and it became a brand new record. So it would have felt disingenuous to keep any lyrics that I'd had for a song like that. It's kind of before times and after times now, and even looking back to Celebration of Endings, I feel like I'm a different person. I think everyone's a different person than they were a year ago or 18 months ago. So it was really important to keep these lyrics of the time period that we were creating it, because it is a reflection and a refraction of the kind of pandemic, I guess, and just the emotions, not even so much the practicalities of lockdown and the pandemic, just the emotion, up and down, and how I'm sure that yourself, John, some days life felt simple and actually quite liberating, and then other days the simplicity was overwhelming. So it's just trying to be honest to the moments, And as we talk through the songs, each song kind of represents a different headspace during that period. So Hunger in Your Haunt was frustration, but also that kind of commitment to trying to get yourself going and trying to kind of deal with all the meaninglessness of life, I guess, last year.
Amazing. We're going to hear it now. This is A Hunger in Your Haunt. It is Biffy Clyro on X-Posure, Radio X. It is Biffy Clyro on X-Posure, Radio X with Denier. It is the third song on their brand new album, The Myth of the Happily Ever After. I'm John Kennedy, and connected to me online are Simon and James and Ben, who are Biffy Clyro. They're talking us through the whole of the album, track by track tonight. And Denier is an interesting one, because part of me thinks, is this a love song? And then it seems to be pretty hard on whoever might be involved in it, if it is a love song.
It's a toxic love song, to be honest, John. It's the song's basically about gaslighting and kind of these, sometimes in a toxic relationship you can kind of have this fantasy that you both sign up to, but it's not actually reality. But you both kind of commit to kind of not bringing out the best in each other. So it is that kind of love song, and that, it's the key lyric, I guess, and may all our denials come true, which is basically kind of admitting to each other that really we're not going to talk about the bad stuff. We're just going to focus and kind of try and, focus only on the connection we have rather than the actual practicalities. So definitely not one for a wedding. But interestingly, musically, this song, sorry, I'm totally dominating.
I was going to say if John and the listeners could really use their imagination and try and picture this as a folk song, because that's kind of how it started out. It's really gone on a massive journey. I don't know if you guys could probably picture that after hearing what we came up with, because it is really like a juggernaut. It really just doesn't really let up, but it started as a really pretty folk song.
I remember the look in Ben and James's face when I said I'm going to do this song, and they were like, "To what?" Because it was a proper pastoral kind of like proper old school folk, and then we just blitzed it again. The intensity of the last year, it was just like, it didn't make sense as like a soft, gentle song. It needed to just be a slap, 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 and it's I think it really kind of, to the point, I think because of the subject matter as well, that the music needed to be really kind of violent, but hopefully soothing as well.
Soothing and violent. It's a trick that only Biffy Clyro could pull off, I think. And so one of the interesting things about this new record, I mean, is not just that you managed to turn it around and create it in such a short space of time, but you could also do it in Scotland by yourselves, record it yourselves, and you are used over your mini 2-decade career. You were used to kind of maybe writing most of the material in Scotland, then going somewhere else, going to London, going to LA to record your records. But this time, trapped, as it were, in Scotland, forced to take charge of yourselves and record yourselves, but in your rehearsal space. Now, I remember having a conversation with you, Simon, and Rich Costy, who produced the last album, A Celebration of Endings, and Rich was describing your rehearsal space in Scotland because he'd flown over from the States to have a look at it and hang out with you and see, how you were working these songs up and all this kind of stuff. And I remember him describing the space as being basically a barn or a cowshed where you could make loads and loads of noise. You couldn't discern anything in particularly from anything that you're all playing. You're all just kind of making a massive racket, but it was obviously a good way of trying things out. And I'm trying to work out how you went from that kind of space into turning it into the space that you were able to record this album in, and it sounds so great.
Well, we basically got our hands dirty a little, and Ben did some tiling in the kitchen, and we put in some of the things you need for recording, some interfaces, and got some new microphones and things like that. The thing is, John, we were quite happy with it being a barn and quite rudimentary. It kind of served us well for 10 or 15 years. I think slowly we're realising that we can do a little bit better. And, we talked in the past about maybe recording at home, but we'd always been kind of drawn to that allure of going to Los Angeles or going away to record. So it was very much obviously a forced scenario, but I think it was a really good process. It was really nice to take charge of that side of things and have a little bit more responsibility, perhaps. Obviously, along with our great producer, Adam Noble, who we've got a fantastic shorthand. We've got a great communication with him. But, I mean, the place isn't a palace now. You know, don't get us wrong. There's still an outdoor toilet. It's still very much a working farm. But hopefully you can hear from the results that we've managed to create something pretty good from it.
Yeah, totally. It sounds great. And I was interested whether, because you had that space, did it mean that you could work up these songs together rather than apart? Because obviously for many people and many musicians, you know, they've been collaborating via these kind of communications, via, you know, different video conferencing services and trying to write that way. Is that something you were able to kind of avoid because you could go into this space?
I think, to be honest, I was still kind of writing some of the songs and things when we started recording. So a lot of the songs, I think the boys weren't even quite sure where we were going to end up.
Absolutely.
So to be honest, we played music for a little bit, but it was the excitement of building the studio, getting it to a level where we were happy to work. And then in the meantime, I was kind of working on music. So we didn't really stand in the room a lot and play the songs. It was kind of just as I was feeling creative, we were then recording, you know, and there was a couple of songs that came in one week and it suddenly seemed like we were going to make a record because at no point, we didn't decide, right, we're home for 6 months, let's make an album. Because for the first few months I wasn't feeling inspired at all. I just felt kind of vapid and vacant, to be honest, of all creativity or inspiration. And it was only kind of round about August, September where I started to write a few songs, and it was like, you know what, these feel new, these feel fresh, and then we slowly decided that we were going to start recording. So it was kind of hand in hand. The boys were kind of working up the studio, getting that going while I was working on the music, and then when we came together, we just started recording basically. But there was a real security, a real comfort in having a place to even go and just focus our time, because as you say, a lot of people weren't even able to see their loved ones at that point, and we had to wait a few months. It was after the first lockdown lifted before we did get together, but it was just such a joy when we did get together, and things seemed very simple. You know, it was like, let's get a studio that we can make work and let's make the best record we possibly can, and you aim to do that in every album, but there's always other things influencing you. And I think the fact that we felt so isolated actually gave the album strength and gave us strength kind of getting them together. But it wasn't like a live record. We didn't like stand and play the songs over and over. We kind of got a few of them together and then just started recording, and then the magic kind of started happening, I guess.
Yeah. And because of that proactive approach, you had somewhere to go and somewhere to record and react to the ideas as they were coming up and changing. And immediately you could, right, let's just record that and capture that first enthusiasm, that first energy.
Exactly. And I think, as James said, it's something we've talked about doing for years, but sadly it took the pandemic to get us to actually just do the work necessary. And now I'm really pleased because we now have this kind of set up in Scotland that we can make a record whenever we want, and that's a wonderful feeling. It's not to say we'll definitely make our next record in Scotland, but there was like a hurdle I'd created in my brain thinking that we need to be somewhere glamorous to make a record, and actually that's not true. You just need to be comfortable. You need to be kind of free of outside kind of just other people's kind of ideas and thoughts, and it's just, things are always simpler when it's just a few of you making a piece of music. You know, it's always easier than when the big machinations of everything else get involved.
Yeah. Separate Missions is the next song. What can you tell us about this? I mean, you kind of gave us a couple of rockers and kind of brought us back into the world of Biffy rocks. And now you kind of, you test us again with some brilliantly kind of industrial and glassy sounds that you've created on this one.
Yeah, well, thank you again. This was a song that if we'd been practicing in the room, I don't know if it would have ended up quite the way it ended up. So I found this really cool synth sound that might be called something like glass feedback or something. So your ears are as on point as ever, John. And it was just a wonderfully abrasive sound. I was listening to like a few industrial bands at that point. I was going through a big Ministry phase, and I just loved some of these really abrasive, discordant tones that they had in their records. And I started playing this pretty little melody, and the song just grew from basically the intro. You know, normally you kind of have a chorus or you have a verse or something, and that kind of, and the song blooms from there. But this song came from the intro, and I showed it to the boys one day, and Ben just started playing it around, and it's a really long intro in the song, which is something we don't normally do. But the melody and the kind of the mood and the tension of the song felt like it could really handle it, and that 90-second or 2 minute kind of rise in tension, and then with James's kind of beautiful bass line, it just all worked so beautifully together. And then the rest of the song kind of came fairly straightforward, but yeah, it felt like a new thing for us to do. It felt Cure, like, you know, that the Cure do that wonderfully in their records, where the instrumentation just drifts in, and before you know it, you've been listening to a song for 3 minutes before Robert Smith starts singing. And that was kind of the thought process behind this song.
Yeah, really interesting. And what's this one about then, lyrically?
This one is about just kind of almost an extension of some of the themes in Celebration of Endings, which is about the deterioration of a friendship, basically, rather than a romantic relationship, and just realizing after a while that you are in fact on separate missions, and that there's no right or wrong. You know, it's not, you don't always have to fall out with someone to just end up in different places, and I think that's what the song's about just inadvertently growing apart without actively falling out. So it's kind of a wistful song about the end of a friendship.
And why not? No, it makes sense. Yeah. You're exploring the whole of the human condition here, as you do on every record. It's important stuff. And we're going to listen to it now. This is Biffy Clyro on Separate Missions on X-Posure Radio X. You're listening to X-Posure on Radio X. I'm John Kennedy, and that is Biffy Clyro with the 5th song on their brand new album, The Myth and the Happily Ever After. It has just come out, and that is Witch's Cup. Again, we're exploring amazing array of different sounds here with Simon and Ben and James. So are those real brass there on Witch's Cup?
James had a 6-week boot camp to master every single brass instrument in the brass section. No, again, part of the excitement of recording in our rehearsal room was to try and create these grand sounds and grand tones without actually having access to, you know, because we all were masked up. It was 3 of us and Adam. We were all like testing every day, so we couldn't have any outsiders. And part of that challenge of trying to create something really over the top without other access. So no, they are synthetic. They are in fact synthetic trumpets, but the scale of the song, this song kind of feels like it could be like a West End musical or something. It's the closest to kind of a carnival song that I've ever written, and it's a nightmare to play live. This is a song that we cannot play together for love nor money. It's just one of those tunes that's really, it resists us ever so slightly, and I feel like for it to fully come alive, we'll need a cast of thousands. So we'd probably need an orchestra, we'd need a chorus line, and we'd need a dance troupe, John. So, people may never hear this one live, but again, it's that the song's about cults actually, and about how some people just give over their entire being to some bizarre belief. And I guess you can apply that to lots of different things in this last 18 months. There's a lot of bizarre beliefs out there at the moment. But it's almost in admiration and also in pity to kind of people that can live that life. You know, I do admire it, that selflessness, but equally I'm kind of worried by it at certain points in certain instances in life. But so yeah, that's what the kind of song's about. And again, it was important to have a kind of really uplifting feel to the music. It's a song that hopefully makes the listener smile, especially after their kind of darker song like Separate Missions, which is quite abrasive. And this one is basically our version of an Andrew Lloyd Webber song.
So in years to come, when the musical does happen, the Biffy musical, then this will be one of the central pieces. Possibly.
Exactly. We've got the name already, John. It's called Scottish Knob. It's a play on American Idiot.
making a Nate's question. I love it.
Brilliant. And from Witch's Cup to Holy Water, which starts in a completely contrasting way. So, the lovely strummed acoustic guitar, and, it then goes off on its own journey, though. But I'm under the impression possibly that maybe some of your songs do start this way, don't they? Often, just as you were talking about, was it Denier? Started as a folk song. That something like this can emerge, and then it seems that you can't necessarily help yourselves, but kind of, by the end of the song, we're going to thump those drums, and I'm gonna mash up that guitar.
It definitely felt like the song needed more. It's a song I've been playing for a little while, and it was this song was actually written for a celebration, but we just couldn't crack it on a celebration of endings. And again, I think we needed the liberation of everything being meaningless last year, so that we could just enjoy things for the purpose and for actually this makes us feel good, so let's not overthink it. But the first half of the song felt so kind of prescient. Obviously I didn't know there was going to be a pandemic, or else the song would have been in celebration of endings, because it talks about hospital rooms and vicious perfumes and all we love is dead. And it's about, it was about the climate, and initially how we're using every single resource we have, so where do we stop? At what point do we stop when we're eating babies' limbs? Is that a line? I probably shouldn't have said that. But so it was about kind of reaching the end of things and the end of resources, and actually musically it didn't capture that kind of end of days feel. It didn't have the kind of the Armageddon type sound that I wanted it to have. So again, just feeling liberated and working in the room, I recorded the first half of the song, and I had this idea for the outro. And we messed around with it for about a week or so. And it just felt like the song needed this monumental climax, to really kind of justify the sentiment of the song, and also the anger, I guess, that I feel that we probably feel about the issues we're singing about in the song. It felt like it needed to be something that felt like this is the end of the world, and and you're going to want this to end by the time it ends,
Yeah. Well, it certainly does. It kind of gets. Could it be more metal? I'm not sure. No,
I think not. I think none more metal. I think none more.
It's like you're channeling Mastodon, and which is obviously a good thing. But I do also wonder sometimes whether there's a clause which says Ben gets to really thump his drums as much as possible. James gets to play his special metal style over egged bass. All of you get, each time on each album, you've got to be able to do that at least a couple of times. Otherwise, you walk away from the project.
I like that, John. That will be our new caveat. Absolutely. You know what? We still love heavy music. It's still my favorite type of music out there. I love intensity. I love people that sing and mean what they're saying, and I feel like a lot of music is kind of washed out these days, which I think there's a place for. For us, that's not necessarily our wheelhouse. We like to kind of make music that makes you sit up and take notice, and we don't want to make background music. So I think that's why we always have that element of what we do, because our music's made to be listened to, not to be sat in the background. And so long may we do double kick drums. Long may we channel Man of War.
Excellent.
As you said, Simon, it's not just sort of for the sake of it. It's there to express the meaning in the lyrics and the music. It all kind of comes in hand in hand. It's not just because we like doing it.
That's a bonus.
We do.
Yeah, you definitely like doing it. But yeah, I love the way that it actually is led by the creation of the song and the kind of song that you're trying to create. That's it, a vital part of it. And if you get to rock out and wig out, then all the better.
The more the merrier. Exactly.
Excellent. So if you like heavy music, like Biffy Clyro, then this is the one for you. Don't be lulled into any false sense of security at the start of this. It will rock. This is Holy Water. It is Biffy Clyro on X-Posure, Radio X. It is Biffy Clyro on X-Posure Radio X, Errors in the History of God. I'm John Kennedy, and all three of Biffy Clyro are joining me tonight to talk us through the whole of their new album, The Myth of the Happily Ever After. We've got Simon and Ben and James connected online. Errors is, I guess, it's the latest single release from the album to tie in with the release of the record. This, again, has all the dramatics of that we love and enjoy within the world of Biffy Clyro. And it's such a big title, Errors in the History of God. You've got to live up to that. I mean, if you wrote that down first before you played a note, then it's like, oh, well, we've set the bar high here.
It's very much a misanthropic perspective, this song, John. It's not really viewing the human race in the most glowing of circumstances, but it's as much inwardly like sung as outwardly. It's just, again, at certain points I just worry that we are the issue. It's not anything else that's the issue. It's us as humans that are the problem, and the things we do and the things we say and the things that we have to consume. By all means, consume this on all streaming services. but you know what I mean? I think at points, again, this is just another perspective. All these songs are just different perspectives that, from sitting at home for a year, that kind of flowed, and I felt the need to kind of sing about, and it's just at points just feeling a bit helpless at how little me personally, how much little I contribute to the world, and for the greater good, and I fear that a lot of us slip through these cracks of kind of actually wanting to help, but not always able to help in the right ways, and so that's lyrically what it is, and musically. This kind of started in a groove that Ben and James were kind of riffing a few times, and it just kind of spoke to me when I heard it.
Yeah.
I bet James is regretting ever riffing this, because it's, for him, it's a real nightmare on the fingers. It's a relentless bass line that I don't know how he does it.
It's easy to play for about 4 bars.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
It's fine. But I guess, Ben, it's kind of classic. It sounds slightly clunky, slightly weird, and it's in 7 time. Is that part?
I find it
single.
I know.
Yeah.
It's an account of 7. It is awkward, like you say. I find musically, I think it's intriguing when it starts. It's kind of inviting you in with a wee wink. And who knows how this is a single, but I'm thrilled it is. Absolutely thrilled.
The bass line is amazing, though, and it's fantastic that you are able to play that all the way through. Is this going to be a live performance? No.
Yeah, and we'll speed it up as well. So
we're going to make it faster.
It will be a live performance. James is going to end up with Popeye fingers.
I know.
He has incredibly strong fingers that are going to have muscles for days.
That's the one thing that's come out of having 2 records since we've toured, John, is that we've got so many songs to choose from, and we genuinely can't wait to play them all. To be honest, it feels like the songs come alive again when you get to play them in front of an audience, and different little ideas pop out, different sounds become key, and different parts of the song take on different importance. So it genuinely, as much as we're joking that it's going to be tough, we really can't wait to play these songs live. I'm just going to have to do a little bit of working out, I think.
Yeah, just the 2 fingers.
That's it.
2 fingers in the truth.
And so on the Fingers Crossed tour, are you going to be playing a lot of these songs? What's the intention? Because obviously that they're going to be different kind of shows to the ones that you would normally do.
Yeah, they were hilariously. These were our warm-up shows for the big shows we were going to play, and we ended up already done all the big shows this year. So it's a warm down more than anything. But I think it's going to be a really special tour. We're playing smaller venues than we've played in a long time. I think for us, it's really important to come out and play a bunch of new music. I'm sure that most bands have been going for 20 years. When someone says that, it's like, eek, oh no, don't play all your new stuff. We don't care. Our new stuff is incredible. So we can't wait to share these songs. And as James says, they change shape when you play them live. And we've been champing at the bit. And I really think that these songs will just find our home once we play them, and I think they are going to squeeze out a lot of older songs when we play live, which is, it does get tough to pick a set. But for these shows, I feel like it's going to be a lot of hardcore fans. You know, the show's sold out really quick. So I think everyone there won't necessarily want us to do just a greatest hits set. So we're not interested in that in this tour. I think it's going to be definitely like a new chapter of a show, you know, and just let these songs breathe and let them kind of become people's friends.
Excellent. That sounds like a great idea to me. And it'll be interesting to see whether you'll be able to play the next song as part of these gigs, because this is different again. Haru Urara, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Well done.
I mean, at the start and at the end, it's like you're reinventing yourselves as a kind of yacht rock band, possibly. No.
We all need some lounge music.
Absolutely.
Again, this was a song that if we practiced in the room too much, it would have become this really muscular song, and it needed to be gentle, it needed to be lush, and it needed to be loose, and thankfully with Adam Noble's expertise, we were able to just capture this real kind of saucy, you know, for want of a better word, it's a bit of a saucy feeling song that obviously it ends up showing its muscles later on when it the outro kind of see you later, we're on the home straight. And the name Haru Urara comes from it was a horse in Japan that ended up losing 131 races, came dead last in 131 races, but over the course of its career, people would keep betting on this horse, presuming that it was going to win or come not last in at least one race. So like come the final race for the horse in the 131st race, like there was like I think 20,000 people turned up to this horse stadium to see the horse. The bets were through the roof. The town was inundated with funds, and the economy was vibrant. It was, you know, thriving. And of course, the horse came dead last. but yet, it gave this part of Japan like a real influx of money, and it really created this cultural moment. And I think he's still discussed these days, this horse. And I just think it's such a beautiful sentiment, especially this last year we've all had where it seems like everything's going wrong. That actually, see, even when everything does go wrong, there can be beautiful sprouts of greenery or like shafts of sunlight can come through, even in the most defeated kind of feeling you can have. So that's where the song title comes from, and it actually also means glorious spring in Japanese. But it was such a beautiful story that I couldn't resist. You know, again after singing about some really oppressive things and some really kind of dark perspectives, it's important to have those moments of optimism too, because that's what life is, and that's what we've all felt this last year. It's not just been oppressive every day, but it's equally not been just straightforward and smiling every day. But it's so it was important to show that flip side to the darkness.
Yeah, definitely. And I looked up the name, and I love this description of the horse as the shining star of losers everywhere.
Which... That's kind of what we are.
And you're shining so brightly, and that's why we love you.
We are the Scottish version. We are a three-man version of a Japanese horse.
You heard it here first. Brilliant. This is it. This is Haru Urara, Biffy Clyro on X-Posure, Radio X. It is Biffy Clyro on X-Posure Radio X with Unknown Male 01. The Myth of the Happily Ever After is the new album. Their first in just a year later, after a celebration of endings. They're on a roll. It's amazing. And in a way, Unknown Male 01, am I saying, should it be 01? I'm assuming it's 01, yeah. This was the first taste we had of the fact that you had a new album even. It's like, oh, hang on a minute, Biffy Clyro just kind of snuck out a track, but they've only just put out an album. What's going on?
Yeah, I know we wanted to kind of surprise people. It felt like it was an important song to put out musically from the album, because it kind of showed the lack of inhibitions on this record, and it very much is it was almost a forced record, like the record demanded to be made. Once the songs were coming, it was like we needed to make this record. And this song, lyrically, it's like a reflection on just when someone struggles with their mindset and depression and things, and maybe I'm not very good at talking about this. It's about kind of depression, and then about reaching that end moment where you don't know whether to live or not, and about wishing to help someone who's in that position, and wishing you could rewind the clock and go back and help someone deal with the situation. So again, another really light-hearted song on the album, but again, musically, this song took a little bit of manipulation. You know, it was so close to being right for so long, but it wasn't right. And then again, just because of the lockdown and everything, just able to spend some time with this song, and I felt like I needed the lyrics to just be right. You know, like I didn't want to sing about such an intense subject and about something that people close to us have suffered with and suffered from and suffered the fallout from, without kind of taking it seriously. And so the music and the lyrics in this are probably the most kind of sentimental and important lyrics in the album, John. And it was a pleasure to record this one. This was a lot of fun to record. It was quite tricky because there's so many parts to the song. You just learning where the song builds sonically, learning how to build the song. You know, we knew the start point and the end point, but we weren't quite sure of how that journey was going to take us. And I mean, Ben's drumming in this tune really is so powerful, and it kind of gives this song that strength when it needs at the halfway point, because it's a song about vulnerability and everything. And then there's just that musical kind of fortitude that comes in with the riff and everything. And very proud of this song, John. It was important that people heard this song first, you know, as I say, to symbolically for the album, you know.
Yeah.
Naturally, it's a lot.
I mean, I've been lucky enough, Simon, to talk to you for many of the Biffy Clyro albums, and you know, I always think you explain the lyrics to your songs really, really well, and they always have such important subjects at the heart of them often. And I wonder, you know, when you're trying to convey that with Ben and James as you approach a song, as you were just explaining, you know, whether you need to convey all of that meaning to them, and whether James and Ben have to interpret that, or whether because you've known each other so long that you don't need to discuss it. Now, how does it work? I mean, how do you approach it, Ben or James?
I think it's almost, we don't really discuss the subject matter of the lyrics when we're making the music. I don't think we have to know that to get the vibe. I think we just kind of, it's been so long now that being in this band that I think we can read each other's minds quite easily, and we just keep batting songs out until we're all extremely happy with it, you know. And it's kind of that's the way it goes. Yeah. So I guess you don't need to go into the meaning necessarily, but you are able to say, actually, no, I think we need to approach this section a bit more tenderly, or something like that, without necessarily examining what is being said in the words.
I think the boys have a faith in me that when I describe how the music, how I need them to play a certain part or something, I think they trust me and they know that it's with purpose. You know, I never ask the boys to do anything that isn't for a reason. And I think that's probably, I mean, we are typically three Scottish guys that don't necessarily sit and talk about it. Also, it's kind of, I like to keep the joy. See, when we're making music, John, I try and not bring the oppression to the boys as much as possible about the music, you know, because I want it to be fun when we're actually doing it, because some of the song subjects are so heavy that if we actually started inhabiting that headspace in every moment of the recording, it'd be really tough. And I think that it probably becomes clearer to the boys when I do my vocals and when they actually are hearing it all, and maybe when I pass them the lyric sheet, they maybe get a bit of their head around it. But also, maybe the boys don't give a shit.
That's definitely not the case.
After 20 years, cool, whatever.
I think there's just the odd line that we'll pick up during the early part of the process, maybe even before Simon's finalised the vocals, and it starts your head going in a little journey. And you know, we picked up some of the lyrics in Unknown Male, and then when you get to the end, and it's like, I like to think of it as the car crash where me and Simon are trying to put Ben off and he's trying to put us off. We're all kind of playing against each other. That kind of represents a turmoil in your mind. You know, when you're having those, when you're depressed, you don't know left and right. And so I think there's just little lines and songs that you pick up and you start to know which way you're headed. Maybe you don't have the whole picture, but I don't think that's massively important to have. You know, everyone's going to have their own picture of a song once it's finished anyway. So you can sort of, there's always perhaps a little room for interpretation, I think.
Yeah, and I think for me, just being a huge fan of the songs that Simon writes, I don't always want to know exactly what the meaning are behind those songs from Simon's perspective, because I like the mystery of it, and that means that the song can mean something to me, and I hope that's okay with Simon, that I can have my own connections with songs and not necessarily know exactly what they're about. So that's important to me anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So Existed is the next song, the 10th song on the Myth of the Happily Ever After. And this kind of, again, you explore some interesting new territory, I think, for Biffy, because this is a bit more of a ballad, but it's almost veering towards the R&B, possibly. It's a kind of synth R&B ballad, possibly. I don't know whether that's the right description.
Love it. What's wrong with being sexy?
Nothing at all.
Yeah. This was kind of Dum Dum was kind of sonically the key song on the record, but Existed was the key kind of song on the album. And before I played this song to the boys, we didn't know for certain we were going to make a record. And this was the one where, in my mind, I kind of knew if I played this to the boys and they were like, yeah, it's good, man, yeah, we'll get to that, then we probably wouldn't have made a record. But when I played it to the boys, they were like, oh, this is really good, we've got to work on this. So it gave permission for the rest of the album to happen. Sonically, there's an interesting part of this because James actually had to leave the studio for 10 days because he was pinged with COVID. But this song, we deliberately didn't want this to be like a rock ballad. We've done a lot of songs where we really have lush instrumentation of strings and everything, and it just felt that would be so typical on a song like this. So we literally ripped everything that a rock band has off the song. There's maybe one acoustic guitar, I think the only thing that's based in a rock format. And so the rest was all done with loops, synthesizers, and it was really liberating because we knew the skeleton of the song was pure and true. And then the closest song in our catalogue, what am I talking about? in our collection of pieces of art was probably Rearrange was the closest song that I remember coming in with that and knowing what it shouldn't be, but not knowing what it should be. And that's what Existed was. We knew what it wasn't going to end up being, but we had no idea where it would finish. And it ended up in this beautiful, really kind of synthetic, it's a bit R&B. We wanted it to have that bit of swing, bit of swagger. And it's a song about forgiveness. I think it was important to not have the song be bombastic, to not reach a rock peak. There's a couple of songs like Holy Water and Haru Rara that reach the kind of Biffy peak. This song doesn't. We deliberately kept the foot off the accelerator, and I think the song's stronger for it, and the sentiment can breathe, and even the way I'm singing this is a little different because I'm doing kind of soft falsetto. I'm doing my best kind of pop R&B vocal, John.
It could be a single. I mean, in some ways, it could be a single if. Yeah, I mean, in complete contrast to something like Errors, but at the same time, I think it would work really well.
Okay, well, maybe Will's listening. John, it's so important. Our band over the years have always tried to reflect all sides of being a human and also being a three-piece rock band. That you don't need to be aggressive all the time. You don't need to be super gentle and wistful all the time, But this last year, it felt like this album had to touch all those moments. It really had to feel those, each thing to its extreme. And we normally try and do that in an album, but because this album was written and recorded from inception to completion less than 6 months, it had this real kind of momentum to it, and it just felt like every moment kind of mattered, and everything became its extreme version of itself because we were moving so quickly. There was no fear. We didn't tell the record company we were making a record, John, as well. So there was none of this worry of, have we missed it with this song? Have we something we've missed? It's like we didn't care. It was just finding these places where it made us feel good and it made us feel like we were saying something fresh. Because again, there was no point in just coming in and making another 11-song rock album. It felt like we needed to say something that was an extension of what we said previously. And I think this song would not exist if it wasn't for the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, it sounds great. And I love the way you've been exploring so many different aspects of your musical minds. It's very exciting. And here's a great example. This is Biffy Clyro with Existed on Radio X. It is Biffy Clyro with Existed on X-Posure Radio X. It is the penultimate song on the Myth of the Happily Ever After, which I've been playing in full tonight with a little help from Simon and James and Ben. One more song to go. And this seems to be, in some ways, just from the title, it's like, right, it's been a tough 18 months. Let's have some fun now. Slurpy, slurpy, sleep, sleep. What a
Yes.
great title. Are you fans of Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep by Middle of the Road?
Who's not? Who
Who is not? It's a good point.
It's, it felt important to end in something that was preposterous. That's basically the nature, because the last year has been completely preposterous. Musically, it mirrors the arrangement of Cop Syrup, the last song on Celebration of Endings, kind of bookended by mayhem, and then the kind of something kind of twisted and beautiful. On Cop Syrup, it's orchestral, and this one it's synth based, and I wouldn't even know how to describe the middle part of the song, but it's a song that was about almost push. It's just, let's push this to the most extreme it can go. I was pushing for it to go on for another 3 minutes. I think everyone else is like, no, dude, I think we get the point. but it is. It's an outpouring of just like, can we just try and forget all the serious stuff, and just try and love each other. The last lyric in this album is "Love Everybody." The last lyric on Celebration of Endings was "F everybody." I'm not sure if I can swear in this, John. I probably can.
Not really, no.
I made the right choice. So it just felt, this is a moment to just let loose, let it go. And the whole last 2 minutes of the song is just trying to be the tension unleashed. It's bringing you up to that point where you just can't take it anymore. And it's like, just love everybody. So there's this kind of optimistic, it's a twisted kind of optimistic point of view through a really quite intense piece of music, but hopefully it does liberate the listener at the end. And it's not fun to play. It's really intense to play. It's brutal. So I can't wait to play this one live, because musically it's like a speed metal band, but hopefully it has the sentiment more of an 80s balladeer.
I love the way that you end the album with such positivity, and it couldn't get more positive than to tell everybody to love each other. Love everybody. It'd be great to have a whole crowd chanting that in unison, and shouting that back at you, with you clad in t-shirts which say "Love everybody," just to reinforce that message. And then maybe behind the backdrop suddenly says in massive, gigantic 10-foot letters, "Love everybody." No,
I love it, John. I think you want to join our production team, right?
Of course, yeah. I'd love to. No, it's great.
It was important to, because as much as this album was created because of lockdown and the pandemic, it's just about the human condition as always, and it just so happens that we've all shared, or it's the first time in history that we've all close to shared the same experience. Now I know that's very simplistic, because there's examples of where some people haven't had to adapt their life, and some people everything has changed, but we all had to shift our life for the first time ever in a way that we couldn't have foreseen. And I think we want that to be the kind of feeling that the kind of we're in this together, good or bad. That's the sentiment of the album. And to start with Dum Dum and end with Slurpy Slurpy Sleep Sleep is just felt like the right thing to do, to kind of give it the right mood when you leave the album, when you enter the album and when you leave the album. And I guess the kind of pun for the Slurpy Slurpy Sleep Sleep is basically, let's not go sleepwalking into the future. Let's not just take things that we're fed and drift off to sleep, and let's take responsibility. Let's be there for each other, and I think especially after this last year, that's what we need. We really need to kind of remember what we need from each other and what we cherish about each other. So hopefully people leave it with a warm feeling.
Yeah, totally. What a fantastic sentiment. And thank you for sharing this with us tonight. It's been absolutely brilliant to be able to talk to all three of you about the new record, The Myth of the Happily Ever After. And we look forward to seeing you on the road, be it in an intimate venue or a big arena at some point over the next year. Fingers crossed that plan stays in action. And yeah, I think, the pandemic obviously has been a curse, but in some ways it brings us these moments and these things that we wouldn't have expected. And a brand new Biffy Clyro album, kind of only a year after the last one, is clearly a good thing for the world. And the music says it all.
It's okay. Well, thanks so much, John. It's a pleasure as always talking to you about the record, and we appreciate your time. And you know what, it would have been disingenuous to make music that didn't reflect this last year. You know, this feels like a record that needs to be out and needs to be heard, and as you say, even the darkest times can bring some joy. So hopefully it brings some joy to people as it did to us.
Yeah, I think it certainly does. Brilliant to speak to you all. And here you are then with the last song on the myth of the happily ever after, with the last song on the myth of the happily ever after. This is Biffy Clyro with Slurpy, Slurpy, Sleep, Sleep on X-Posure, Radio X.
Radio X.